What's going on? This is TJ Murphy, and welcome back to another episode of Adventurous Entrepreneurs. My guest today is Brian Aquart. Brian is a dynamic leader whose career trajectory exemplifies a deep commitment to intentional work and purposeful living. With a foundational career as an employment attorney, Brian's professional journey took a transformative turn when he decided to align his career with his passion and values. This led him to roles of increasing responsibility and impact, culminating in his current position as a vice president in the healthcare sector, where he focuses on workplace and community education. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Brian is the creator and host of the Why I Left podcast, a platform inspired by the pandemic-era trend of individuals reevaluating their careers, aka the Great Resignation. Through his podcast, Brian explores the personal stories and decision-making processes behind significant career changes, aiming to provide insights and encouragement to those contemplating similar shifts. An advocate for work-life balance, time management, and the pursuit of passions, Brian also shares his journey and strategies for integrating personal interests, such as running marathons around the world with a demanding professional life and family constraints and commitments. Brian's story is a testament to the power of introspection, resilience, and the pursuit of fulfillment in both career and personal life. Just a few of the golden takeaways Brian shares in this episode are the significance of making informed career decisions with intentionality, the transformative power of podcasting in uncovering and sharing personal stories of change, strategies for overcoming fear and embracing self-reflection during life's pivotal moments, and the importance of time management and balance in pursuing one's passions alongside professional and family commitments. So, without further ado, this is me and Brian Aquart. Welcome to the Adventurous Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Murphy. Since quitting my corporate 9-to-5 and starting a business while backpacking through Asia back in early 2017, I've had the privilege of learning from some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs. Through these conversations and my own journey, I've learned that much like in life, entrepreneurship is an adventure. On this podcast, I explore the journeys of top-performing leaders in their fields. These wide-ranging conversations include tactical business advice, how I built this insights, lessons in leadership, life hacks, travel stories, favorite hobbies, and insights into living a purposeful and joy-filled life. Adventures await us, so let's dive in. Hey, Brian, welcome to Adventurous Entrepreneurs.
Hey, man, it is really great to be here. Good to see you again. Excited for this conversation.
Likewise. So at the time of recording, I was just on Brian's podcast, like 2 weeks ago. We had an awesome conversation then. So this will be fun. We're getting to turn the mic around a little bit, dig into Brian's story and all the incredible things that have led him to where he is today. So let's start there. I'd love to give listeners just a bit of background on your journey. Can you tell us your story to you becoming the adventurous entrepreneur you are today?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, the running line that I've been using lately is I'm an employment attorney by trade, healthcare executive by day, and then podcaster by night. And so my background is in the employment law space. So I started out, I'm an 2009 graduate, law grad, and I started out in private practice here in actually New Jersey. I live in New York now, and did that for a few years. Then I pivoted into more an in-house role into like city government, and was primarily responsible initially for investigating different like employment law related issues, right? So think of allegations of harassment, retaliation, those types of things. Then moved on to then now oversee at a different city agency those similar types of allegations. And then in 2016, I had this, or really 2015, I kind of went through this moment where I was looking for something different. I had been really trying my best to get back into some type of formal, like firm, law job. And truthfully, it wasn't working out. And, it felt like, it was a bit of a downer type of time. Like, damn, like, did I make the right decision by even coming here? But I had a chance. Went through coaching and did all that and figured out that a nice pivot for me was to go down the employee relations route, kind of the HR potential route. And so I did that. And so in 2016, I eventually made my way into healthcare, and I started out in in a hospital here in New York as a manager in the HR space. I was doing a lot of the employee relations work, but I also had a lot of clients that I represented, and then thought my path was going to be very linear in that regard. So manager, I then became a director. I was like, all right, cool. At some point I'll, become a VP and figure that out and maybe stay here or not, who knows? But after the director role, I had this really type of life-changing opportunity for me. It was my career fork in the road moment where I could either go the route of kind of going down that VP route in the HR space, or become our CEO's chief of staff. And I wanted to really be intentional about making the right decision, because I was a little later stage in career at the time. Like, this was my actual second career.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to make sure I was making that decision for the right reasons. And I thought about it. Obviously, I had a great conversation with him. I didn't want to be blinded by celebrity, but I ended up making that move. And people probably listening would be like, well, of course you would make that move. But, I really did have to think about it, because where does it go from there? And it was truthfully one of the best moves I could have made. And it exposed me to so much. I got to see the organization at a level that I hadn't thought of, that I hadn't thought I would see for some time. And then I continued to move about that. And I did that for a couple of years. And then now I'm in, now I am in a VP role, but now in a different type of space, but something that's really driving me personally and professionally. It feels like purposeful type work. And so now I'm still in healthcare. I'm still at the same, org there, but I'm in our Center for Learning and Innovation, working in this workforce and community education space. So that's been a joy. And then, randomly, this is a little bit in the past role, but, we talked about, you being on my podcast. So I then got very interested during the pandemic about why people were leaving their jobs during that time, and eventually started this whole show about it. And so it's called Why I Left. We could definitely talk more about that, but it's been a nice little passion project for me. And I get to meet, great people such as yourself. I've talked to another individual from Height, and it's just good to just get out there and speak with folks and learn more about the decision-making process that folks go through in their professional lives.
I couldn't agree more. For me, starting this podcast, it was really to scratch my own itch and, selfishly just get better at communicating, listening, asking good questions, which translates well into everything that I do, from the creative side and marketing to sales. And that was my ultimate goal. It wasn't to start a podcast that was going to go viral and have millions of downloads. It was just well, if I can get better through this process, while I also get to listen to just some incredibly adventurous entrepreneurs out there doing amazing things, helping people, and learn some things from them that I can apply in my own life, my own business. And if even just one person gets some value out of that, then hey, I've won on three fronts. Obviously, this is probably, I think, our 64th episode now, and things have grown, and we've helped a ton of people through this process. But I love how both with the podcast and just in your career, you really took this intentional approach of not just doing maybe what everybody expected you to do on an impulse, but really thinking critically about how that was going to be able to lead to you living the lifestyle that you wanted to live, achieving your professional goals. And I want to get more into that here in a bit, but let's talk about why I left, because the concept behind it, it's fascinating. It's timely. I had an awesome time on the podcast. COVID was a spark for it, but what was that ultimate spark? Did you have a moment or something that inspired you to launch the podcast? And why is it important for you to explore these stories with your guests?
Yeah. So, I'll take a step back. So during the pandemic, when it started, like I mentioned, I worked in a hospital, and I was a part of these redeployment efforts to help, as we were dealing with the surge, especially here in New York. I was a part of a team. I was kind of the administrative side. I had worked with the clinician, worked with the project manager, and a whole team of folks in this, what we call this labor pool command center, that were helping to, because certain areas were shutting down, we were then sending folks who, extra sets of hands to deal with this surge. And so what was interesting to me during that time was that everything was chaos. right? It was all chaos. And if you were working in a role, you were thankful to be in a job, right? Money's still coming in, especially if you had a family, all those things. These things are happening. So mind you, I'm very head down at that time. And so I'm an article junkie. And so I was often reading a lot. I read a lot of, in the employment space, the HR space, the leadership space. And you start hearing these rumblings of folks starting to leave their jobs, some of them without anything in mind, right? Anything next. And so I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, oh, you think it'd be a couple here and there, like, all right, it happens, whatever. But then it started to become like this groundswell of activity. And I started to ask myself, well, I wonder why folks are doing this. Because in my mind, the world is kind of going crazy around us. It's kind of, like I said, in chaos. Why would someone leave a seemingly stable opportunity for for nothing or even for something else when who knows what's going on? And it kept coming up. And what would happen is I'd read these articles and let's say, oh, TJ would be interviewed by someone on Insider and they got a couple lines from you. They talk about what's going on. You say a couple things and then the article ends. And I'm like, I bet you TJ's got more to say. I wonder if he'd want to tell his story. And these things kept happening over and over again. And then lo and behold, like January or so, or no, it was January, first quarter sometime, the big jobs report comes out. And like over 4.5 million people had left. And it was this huge thing. And this professor, Anthony Klotz, coins this phrase, the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is huge. So I wonder if these folks would want to tell their story. And it kept being a thing. And so I then was like, all right, I had the idea initially, like, oh, I wonder if. And then lo and behold, like one night I happened to just wait, it was like a 3 a.m. idea. I woke up and then it was like, oh, you should start a podcast. Oh, what would you call it? Well, people are leaving their jobs. Oh, well, why did they leave? Oh, why I left, right? Because I wanted it to be about them. So why I left. And I was like, oh, that's got a nice ring to it. It's catchy. It's this. I don't want it to be too attached to Great Resignation or anything like that, like the words itself or say quit or anything like that. But it's really why I left. And I wrote the intro out here. I'm very close, like the couch I was on. I wrote the intro at like 3 a.m. And I was like, oh, whoa, this is different. Because you have sparks of ideas.
Yeah.
But something about this one was like, all right, wow, this is different. So let's try to figure this out. And so I did, because I did all the, the back, got the books, went through the whole thing about how you do a podcast, right stuff to get. But then I needed people, because what I was very intentional about was that I did not want the show is truthfully not about me, right? It's about, I'm sharing the stories of others. And so that's kind of the inspiration, is the behind why I left. And then why I'm doing it is because my premise is that I don't think that, given my background, I don't think we talk about resignations enough, because it's like this taboo topic where maybe there's certain stigmas that are attached to someone leaving a job, or they feel like a failure or whatever, or maybe there are other legitimate reasons that, they may want to talk about that, which are fine and obviously happen. But I think I thought there was something that people could learn from the decision-making process that we all go through as humans, especially in an aspect where we all can relate, and that's work, and that's potentially leaving work. And that's where it really kind of started. So, and it's been a beautiful set of stories, because you get a chance to, and your listeners will get a chance to hear you later this year, about like, wow, like TJ's just like me, right? Or I was going through that, or Brian is doing this, or Judy's doing that. Like, wow, these are real people. Like, that's hence the catchphrase, real stories from real people, because I want you to see them in yourself, see yourself in them.
Man, I love that. I'm curious, like, you've had a lot of these conversations now.
Yeah.
What has been one of the most like common threads or just surprising insights that you've gained from your guests in terms of why they left?
Yeah. Well, I would say the biggest one, and it's funny, earlier, I think it was this week, I actually recorded a masterclass on overcoming fear, right? Because fear is I would say the biggest theme that we talk about on the show. And what it is that what I've learned is that we don't give ourselves enough time to process, enough time and space to process what it is like we actually like truly want, right? Like
Mm,
we don't give ourselves that. And truthfully, that's kind of sad when you think about it,
it's
right?
very sad. Yeah.
But it's true. We don't give ourselves that because think about folks with different dreams and then don't get me wrong, kids are a blessing, things like that. But then something comes in that happens that stops that dream and you don't think about it anymore. But what the pandemic did, what I see and have kind of uncovered is that there is very rarely a time that you and I can recall, well, probably not that we can recall, that in our lives we all go through this similar experience, right? And the pandemic gave us this space, gave folks space where they weren't in the office more often than not. They either weren't in the office and they had time to think. They were forced to have that time to think and process about what it is that they're actually doing. And what you see is that the fears that people had or have, they started to kind of go away because there was so much time, space, and opportunity to do other things. People just tried it.
Mm,
And I've loved to kind of watch that. And you hear people like there are some episodes like you hear them processing it during our chat because I only go through like a brief intro with them, but I don't ask too many. I gotta let them like the setup,
yeah.
but I don't ask for the responses and some of the follow ups. You'll never know because I never know what you might say. But some of them were like, "Oh, wow, this was helpful for me because I didn't get a chance to like process what I was going through at that time." Hence my
Mm,
earlier point, right? But now they're like, "Yeah, this was really good for me, and here's why." And I love to hear that because it's so true to us, right? And so I'm big on that whole human experience thing because we all go through this. We all don't give ourselves time and space and opportunity to really think about what it is that we truly want. And if we do, and we know what it is, unfortunately, there's folks who don't go for it.
Yeah. No, thinking on that, there's so many just lost opportunities, so many dreams that never even materialize because people are so caught up in the rhythm of whatever it is they're doing, but
Right.
typically a 9 to 5 and just going through the motions there. So I see the Great Resignation. It was kind of a reset for a lot of people.
Yes.
They were able to be intentional. They stepped away. They gave themselves that time back, that freedom to then to dream, to think about what other options are out there. What else could I be doing? And
Yeah.
it's incredible that you're able to be able to dig out and have those aha moments for people in real time on your podcast, figuring out what that truly meant for them and what that led them to, ultimately pursue. So I'm curious, when you were just getting started, podcaster, finding guests, and especially because you're looking for a very niche
Right.
audience, and there might be some parallels here just in terms of like prospecting and sales and finding the right audience for your product or service. How did you go about finding your initial guests and starting those conversations?
That's a wonderful question. So for me, my main platform has been LinkedIn. And the trigger for me was a lot of times if you have somebody who has put a post out there about after X amount of time, I finally decided to leave my job. And
Mm,
here's what X, Y, and Z meant to me. And now I'm starting this, XYZ thing. That was something for me to say, okay, let me reach out to you. Right. Let me see if you're interested. So that's one route. So LinkedIn is the route. The other place was the actual articles. So the first guest that I got was I actually found her in an article. They reached out to her as a woman named Chelsea, and she talked about her story. And there were a few other folks who talked about their story there. And I found them on LinkedIn and I reached out. Is a lot of cold messaging, right? So we talk about sales, and look, I'm not a sales guy, but I guess these would be that my equivalent of a cold call.
Yeah.
of, hey, here's the idea I have. I know I'm a random person just reaching out, but I have this vision for this show. And here's why I think you'd be a good guest.
Mm.
And we either they give the intro call or they don't. And now, granted, as I'm sure most sales folks know, I got ghosted a lot, right? I still get
Yeah.
ghosted, right? I mean, it
Of
happens.
course. It's a numbers
You know,
game.
it's a numbers game, right? You don't take it personal, and at times it may not be the right time for that individual, or they truthfully just I'm not interested, right? And that's okay too.
Mm.
But the few people who did, we had these wonderful conversations. And so LinkedIn has been a primary source. There's also another, as I started, teeing up that the show was about to be launched, I met folks very quickly who like the podcasting tribe is very, as although there's, a million and one
Yeah.
podcasts,
Now there's a ton.
now there's a ton, but there are the tribe is very small and very tight knit when you meet folks who are in the space who are actively running a show. And so I met a woman named Lena who put me onto this site, and I can't remember the name, but it was like this site for like oh sorry, it was called like Matchmaker,
Mm.
where you could people who were potential guests put their info on there, shows put their info on, and I've actually pulled a couple people from there, and people have reached out to me, and I'm like, okay, this aligns well, and we can chat. So it's been a mixture of those things, and of course, you get a couple referrals here and there, friends who know, like, hey, you got this going on. Oh, do you know anybody? Perfect. So it's been my in my virtual way, really boots on the ground comment warrior over here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just trying to get folks who are interested and who believe in the vision. And it's very quick. They're very quick to see why they should join. And if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you, like, so I reached out to, or I think we connected. Someone reached out to me about this. What was that like? Did you understand fully like what I was looking to do after our first conversation?
Yeah. So a little bit unique in this circumstance of how I got onto your show. One of my colleagues kind of looks for opportunities, knowing that, I had left my corporate 9 to 5 and went and traveled the world, started this business. He was like, hey, I think this could be a cool thing. Like he's doing the COVID focus, but there might be something here. And I was like, well, this is awesome. I listened to an episode and loved the vibe that you had. And, ultimately felt like it could be a cool platform to tell my story. So, even though it wasn't explicit that that's what you were doing at the time, it turned out that that was kind of the direction you were taking it
Yeah.
moving forward, getting into more of not just the COVID time era, but people in general
Yeah.
leaving behind their corporate 9 to 5 in pursuit of a passion project, an entrepreneurial venture, or something else entirely.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about our conversation, because it does tee up nicely. And as I've always thought about in the beginning, I told to myself like, hey, these first 3 seasons, because you never, like, COVID is essentially like over, right?
Yeah.
And like Great Resignation is over. But there's some remnants in this season. We have that. But what's great about those last few episodes of season 3 is I start teeing it up that I want to hear about your moment, right? And not every job is worthy of a discussion, right? Every job that you leave is not worthy of a discussion,
Yeah.
but there's typically that one pivotal jump that there's some thought behind it. Maybe you're like, you did your own thing now, and here's what it's led to. People, I think, are very interested in that, and I think those are the types of stories that don't get old, because it's almost like each year, or maybe each 2 or 3 years, you have this new crop of professionals or entrepreneurs or creators who are now getting into the space, getting into the working world, and there's lessons that people can pick up from this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned like taking the jump, taking that leap of faith. What advice would you give to people who are listening in right now and they're contemplating starting their own podcast, passion project, business, but are hesitant? Maybe they've got time constraints. They're still working a 40-hour week, a 9 to 5, or they're just afraid of failure, the unknown. What advice would you give to people in terms of getting
Yeah.
started?
Yeah. I think, my biggest thing is that you, one, you need to, if you have identified something that you want to do, own it, right? Own that, hey, I want to do this thing. So in this case, podcast, I want to start a podcast. All right, say it to yourself. If you're a vision board person, write it up there somewhere, right? And then from there, figure it out. You got to make the time. I work a very full-time job right
Yeah.
now, and so, and I often get that question, like, how do you have time for this? I was like, you know what? If you're interested in something, you really want to do something, you will find a way to get it done, right? And like, I'm married, have 2 kids, very full-time job, run this podcast on the side, and I have time for everything because I make time for stuff. And now don't get me wrong, some things need to be sacrificed. So I don't really watch a lot of TV anymore or do all that, because it's like, and really, am I missing anything? Not really, right? It's more like I'm being very intentional in the things that I'm doing, right? That's probably like a running theme with me now. But if you want it, own it, and then you just make the time. The other thing I'll mention too is that uh, when you're starting something like this, like, I had no idea about this space, but you, the internet, social media has made things so much easier for us. And even little things about, well, what hosting platform am I going to use? What mic should I use? How do I even go about just just Google it, right? Like, Google it, or
All the
get you a book.
information's out there.
It's out there. It's out. There's 1,000,001 people who are looking to do this. I'm not the first podcaster. You won't be either, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could find someone who's done it before. So I think it's about making that time. I'm sorry, owning it, making that time, and then just taking action. Like, you have to take action, and don't make excuses, for yourself. And then the last thing I'll say is, especially when it comes to podcasting, because I love your approach to it. You mentioned it here and you mentioned it on the show as well. I didn't get into this for the money either. Like, I'm not trying to be Rogan or anything like that. Right.
Yeah.
I got into this. I nerded out on something, wanted to build some relationships. Obviously it's very helpful for the personal brand as well, but know why you're doing it. If it's solely about money, it's not going to last long. It's not, because your heart's not in it. It can get frustrating if you're one of those like likes follower folks. Like, it's okay. Like, I have content that ends up being duds. It's fine.
Gonna happen.
It's fine. It happens. But know why you're doing it. Okay. And always just continue to trust the process. So, own it, make time, definitely take action, right? None of this is going to be, nothing's ever going to happen if you don't take action. And then just continue to trust the process and trust your why that you got into this space in the first place.
It's wise. It's wise. And you talk about, if it's important to you, if it's something you're passionate about, if your why is truly behind it, you're going to find the time for it. I
Right.
used to watch a lot of TV when we get off work, go sit on the couch, my wife and I binge some Netflix. And, as our lives have become more and more full over the past 3-4 years, like, we still watch TV, don't get me wrong, but like, that's not the norm. Most
Right.
nights we're out doing something, we're either spending time together with friends, or I'm doing like some professional development or networking, going to an event, doing some podcast work. And I don't miss it. The time is better spent doing these fun things. And when I'm totally drained and want to just sit on the couch, great, that's there for me. So
that's the beauty of it. Always be there for you.
yeah, it ain't going anywhere. It's not going
Yeah.
anywhere. So I think that's a good segue here, because when it's important to you, you will find the time. And one of the biggest challenges that we all face is living up, if you like well-rounded, balanced, blended, whatever the words are. Some people don't like the word balance anymore, and I agree with that, but it ultimately boils down to the intentionality behind how you spend your time and doing the things that bring you joy, are important to you, and doing it with the people that you care about most. So what does that look like for you? You mentioned you got a very full-time job, you got the podcast, you got a family. do you have any rules or structure that you build in to be able to make sure that there is time for the things that are most important, specifically your family? I would love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely. So, if my days are typically structured, like I'm an early riser, right? So, but my time is between like 5 a.m. and 6:30. Work out, do whatever, or not, or sleep if I need to, right? But by 6:30, I'm up doing whatever I need to do, for the kids and getting them ready. And then when I'm at work, like I'm present, right? So like I said, there's a lot going on. So
I
I'm
bet.
very present when I'm there. And then I would say more often than not, when it's time for me to be home, there's a nice window between, let's just call it, let's say 5:30 and like 8 o'clock or 8:30, where that's like family time. Like everybody's back home or cooking dinner, hanging out, doing whatever. And there's time for us to just hang out as a family. And not every night, but most nights, if either my wife and I are watching something or doing something we enjoy, uh, around maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock, folks are starting to wind, or she's starting to wind down, maybe go to bed, and then I have a nice little window. Now, granted, I know folks are kind of maybe against like grind culture and hustle culture, stuff like that. And maybe
There's a
I should
season
be
for
getting,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
7, 8 hours of sleep, but I don't always do that. But there's that little window between like 11 p.m., 12, 1 a.m. I could knock out a couple things. And then I do that and we go from there. Is that an everyday thing? No. And there are other days that'll flex, but that's how I kind of do it. I'm a fan of, you ever heard of like time blocking?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I do that. Probably not as like say, hey, because I don't want to be too rigid with myself because
Your
I have to
calendar
be.
isn't just all perfectly color
Yeah.
coded and every
Yeah.
minute is accounted for.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
I'm with you
can't do
there. I
that.
can't do that either.
Yeah, but I'm definitely like, okay, you know what? For the next couple hours, I'm focused on this, and boom, I'll do it like that. But I can't spend my time blocking because that would be like I say to myself, all right, here's the plan, boom, boom, and boom, and we go from there.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, Brian, as we look to wrap up here, I have a choose your own adventure question for you. So
Okay.
you can pick which one you'd like to answer or both if you so desire. But first is what is a favorite place that you've traveled to in the past, say 5 years? Could be any time, but you want to give yourself a constraint there, 5 years. Or second, just a recent adventure that you went on, something you did with your family, with some friends, maybe in your own city, your own backyard. But in either case, what was it like? What made it so memorable? Maybe a favorite meal or drink you had, a lesson you learned. Give us a story.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll do so I'm an avid runner, right? I'm a marathoner now. I think if you hit one, you can call yourself a marathoner, but I got 3 under my belt now. Last year I ran the Berlin Marathon, and it was my first time in Germany and my first time running a race where a like a world record was broken. And so it was an experience and then what's funny is then when I ran Chicago right after that, then the other world record was broken, right?
Wow.
So that was a bit of a surreal type of year. But thinking about Berlin, it was an experience because, well, like I said, I'd never been there, but when you go there, you see the history of obviously some of the things that were happening in World War II. And you're looking at the buildings and you're seeing like the shelling that happened,
Yeah.
and it's still there. And then you're just like you're like running in this place. And so I had a great time being there. It was an adventure because it was my first international marathon, and it was something I'll never forget. And I'm glad to have experienced it with my wife as well. And it was just one of those things. You're like, oh wow, like I am in this. Like I'd never thought I would be running marathons in the first place, but let alone I'm over here in Germany running a marathon, right? And then
Crazy.
obviously, Chicago happened after that. And I have a few more, don't get me wrong, but that was like last year, that was a big moment for me because it was just like it felt like you felt a bit more like human, right? And I don't know if you have, I don't think you all have kids just yet, but like
Yeah.
when you have kids and all that, like you almost sometimes forget who you are for a moment because you have to focus so much on obviously the things that they need. But it was that spark that you were like, oh man, like I really felt like me, right? It was just to be out there having some fun and doing something I love to do, which is, run, work out and do all that. So that's that was my last, like, that was a nice adventure that I had.
Oh, definitely. That sounds incredible. And
Yeah.
yeah, to be able to go run a marathon abroad, that might need to be on my bucket list. Now, I ran my first one last year, and don't get me wrong, it was an amazing experience, but after it I was like, man, maybe I don't want to do more of these. Like, kind of it was hard on my body, all that training and preparation. I've always been a runner, but yeah, pounding pavement for 26 miles, it definitely does a number on your knees, yes. At least for me. So
same
kudos
here.
to you for being able to keep getting after it and chasing down those records. I'm sure. Are you chasing a PR currently or anything like that? Or
well, so right now what I'm chasing is, so at the time we're recording, it's March 1st. So yeah. I turned 40 this month, on the March 21st. And so my me to me gift is I plan to run 40 races to celebrate my 40th year of life. Not 40 marathons, that's crazy, but 40 races, yeah. Right? So it's like a mixture of, I got some 10Ks, some 5Ks, all of that. I am running 2 marathons again this year. But it's one of those things where, one of the things I love about your podcast, like this adventurous nature. Yes, it could be about entrepreneurship, but also there's that personal aspect to it. Is that one of my big themes for this 40th year of life is movement, right? You're an outdoors guy, you love those things. And we are just so fortunate to be able to get up, get out there and just get after it, whatever it is. My thing is, I like to, run, lift and, and do those types of things. Other folks like to, I like to cycle too, but, the swimming and whatever it is.
Yeah.
But we are so blessed just to be able to get out there and move. And so that's my word of the year. My focus of the year is movement. And that's how I'm celebrating it. So that's what I got coming up. So that's a lot of races.
Man. That's a huge feat. I'm excited to follow along with that. And man, it's just a great point. Like, we are so blessed to be here in this time of life and have, the ability to move for those of us that can. Obviously, I don't want to be discriminatory here, but
absolutely,
for those that have, don't take it for granted. It's a blessing, and get out and use your body a little bit more today. It's going to treat you well. So Brian, where can people find and support you online? I'm sure you're gonna be sharing all these races as you're going through them. So where can people connect with you online, socials, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me, Brian Aquart, Aquart. The show is why I left.co. That's why I left.co. And then a lot of the running journey stuff will actually likely be on Instagram, which is, that's the Brian Aquart. So TheBrianAquart. So that's pretty much where you'll find me. But I'm pretty active, and I'm probably the only Brian Aquart on LinkedIn. So
unique name.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we'll put links to everything in the show notes, make it super easy for people to find you. And Brian, I just want to say thank you again for having me on your show and being willing to come share your story with our listeners. This has been a fun conversation, and I just appreciate you, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
To all of our adventurous listeners, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share this on social media or with someone you know will get some value from it. Leaving a review goes a long way in helping people find the show, and I personally appreciate reading them when they come in. So please go drop one if you have the time. We'll see you all next week, and remember, whether we're talking about business or the things that bring us joy outside of work, life is meant for exploring. So go out there and live it one adventure at a time.